Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you are listening. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Run It Back. I am Menelik Fernandez, the host of this show. And the premise of Run It Back remains the same, and I start all of the episodes the same, so bear with me as I start this one the same. Basically, uh, Run It Back takes teams that have played previously, and we run it back, so to speak, where we take a look at things that worked in the game, things that didn't work in the game, how we talk about how we prepared for it, discuss intricacies of the game, things like screen coverages or matchups or any of that kind of fun stuff. And oftentimes we have been very fortunate, as we are today, to have one of the coaches from the game join us. So today, we're talking about a game that occurred March 1st, 2019. It's a high school game of Oakland Christian versus Lakes. Um, and we have the head coach of Oakland Christian, Coach Dennis Hopkins, joining us today. Dennis, give me a second. I want to try and do you justice with a little bit of an introduction here. Dennis has been at Oakland Christian since 2004 as a basketball coach and teacher. He's also been the athletic director since 2009. He is the basketball coaches of Michigan's assistant executive director, as well as an executive board member. Prior to being at Oakland Christian, he was a Springfield Christian coach for 3 years. He's also somebody who I have known through the Rising Coaches Network, so shout out to Rising Coaches, as an excellent contributor and somebody who wants to really, share, get better, grow the game, etc. And in my humble opinion, his ceiling is definitely professional basketball. This is a guy that knows the game, is highly organized, and can really help out at any level, in my opinion. And also, in my humble opinion, if he did nothing more with the game of basketball, will most likely end up in the Michigan Coaches Hall of Fame. So we are very, very lucky and fortunate to have Coach Dennis Hopkins of Oakland Christian joining us today. Sir, excellent to have you. Thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. I appreciate those very kind words. You missed one thing. I got 2 years with Greg Campy at OU, and those definitely different styles of coaching wrapped around that style. So it definitely added to some things that I learned along the way. But
so what I will say to you then, sir, is please update your LinkedIn so the guys like me know stuff like that. but I apologize for missing that, and thank you for sharing.
I'm old. That's technology. All good.
I
All
hear you.
good. Fun.
I
It
hear you.
was. It's been fun. It was. I think there's 25, 26 years of coaching basketball. So I've been enjoying it.
And incredibly successful without the ability to really recruit. And I know that you're somebody who pays attention to that rule. I know that some people work around that at various places, but I know through various discussions with you, you paid attention to that. So in my personal opinion, you are the essence of what a coach really is, taking what you have and making it better, as opposed to just looking for better and recruiting over type deal. Now
I
let's
appreciate it.
it's simply the truth though. I mean, a lot of coaches don't want to coach, they want to recruit. So let's be honest about that, obviously. Um, so give us some background, please. We discussed it in preparation a little bit. What does your league structure look like? What's the importance of the game that you chose to share with us? What's the value of winning this game moving forward? What point of the season? All of that fun stuff, please.
All right, so this particular game is the district round. So in Michigan, the playoff system is set up as districts, regionals, and quarter semi, and all that kind of stuff. So this is the first segment of games in our state tournament. This particular team is a crosstown rival, probably about 15 minutes from us. We play them in an opening game every year, but they're in a different league than we are. So we don't compete other than that opening game. This particular senior class, I didn't have any of them as freshmen, but this district round, they never lost a game in that first segment of games in the state tournament. And interestingly enough, when they beat Our Lady of the Lakes in this game, that made the third year in a row that we had beaten them at the championship of this round of the playoffs. Earlier in the year, They beat us pretty badly. It was a 10-point game, but it was really worse than that. We couldn't score. And this class was having a struggle. We needed to win this game just to be 500 in the season. And so, it was a big deal. We went through a stretch in the season where we just couldn't score, couldn't do things. Lots of energy, great group of guys. And if you watch, as you saw the film, not very big at all, very guard heavy. And so it was an interesting year, but we were peaking at the right time for this group, because they eventually go on into the regional and competed there. We didn't win that, but we made it. I believe we made it to the regional final. And in the regional final, we played a team that had beaten us by 25, and we took them down to the end. And I think we lost by like 4 or 5 when it was all said and done. So they had maximizing their ability per se.
Is it me or you? I have you now.
All right, it might be me, but I'm in. Got me?
Yes. Did opening the door work? Is that the trick?
I don't know. I have a closet as an office, so it's kind of tiny in here, in the back.
That's all right.
I apologize. So what part did I
missed
did
you
you
just
get? What
after
did
you had said they took them to the finals. Just after that, you cut out there. So
okay, so we had to win the game to be 500. They just lost. We end up losing to a team that had beaten us in the regional. We ended up losing to them by like 4 or 5, and they had beaten us by like 20 earlier in the year. So this group had really turned around and changed it for themselves.
Awesome. All right, so when we get into preparation for this game, I find that the level of coaching that seems to have the greatest amount of diversity between what coaches are doing is at the high school level. I was a high school coach for a couple of years myself, and I know that there are definitely certain coaches that are doing almost nothing. There are certain coaches that are focusing entirely on themselves, and then there are certain coaches that have the ability to get into taking a look at other teams and doing something similar to what other levels are doing. So what is your strategy? How do you prepare for this game? What goes into preparation?
Knowing that this was going to be probably a team we were going to see in the playoffs, we kind of prepped for it. I kind of had a live document that I was adding to over the course of time. When I prep for a game, I'd like to have 3 to 4 films on a team, but at the high school level here in Michigan specifically, that can be difficult. Now that everybody's streaming games, they have figured out, you can see them, but even in the streaming, they can block it. So after it's no longer live, they can actually shut it down on you so you can't get it. So I've actually this year been doing a lot of screen recording, which is kind of weird. I'm screen recording and then dumping it on. So we have film, but I want to have 3 or 4 if I can. This particular team, I think we had over the course of the season, we probably had about 6 or 7 films on them that we could kind of play with. So it was probably a 2-week prep. And basically, I was prepping 3 different scouts at the same time for this particular set of games.
Him or me? Did I lose him again?
Video.
Sorry, Dennis, let me interrupt you. You cut out again, and where you cut out was right when you said that you were prepping a few different matchups.
Yeah, so we prep. I'm actually going to talk and walk and go to another spot in the building while I talk and walk.
That's fine.
We are going to break down video.
I think we got to wait until he gets there. I'm going to pause this.
You're an IT guy, so we'll see what happens.
All right. So we had a little IT issue, and we're back up. And I think right where you were was talking about. I mean, we had finished sort of talking about the film, and you were moving into what you do with it and how you're going to utilize it, I believe.
Okay, so we make some, obviously we make clips like everybody else does, and we show them the main sets that they're going to use. We do it a little differently with this particular group that we had that year. We did all our film in the gym, so we literally would shine it right on the wall and show them a clip, and then walk them through the coverage, or just kind of give them reminders. We kind of do our coverage kind of the same for everything. We're not changing from game to game. Find that easier for guys to do. But then we just kind of remind them how this particular play and how that would work with this particular group. Um, and so we'd walk them through stuff, then we go over, show them some more stuff, come back, walk them through. It's kind of the best way that we did it with this particular group. Um, we talk about the individual players and some specifics to the player, but we didn't give them too much information. We found that it was an issue with this particular group, giving them less was more for this particular group of this particular year. So
Do they also get like a paper document themselves? You mentioned that you had one document that you were kind of adding to throughout the season. Do you give them anything that's sort of a summary of that?
I would give them a little bit, not a lot. Some years I've given them multiple pages. This particular group was a single page with the bullet point highlights. That was the most they needed, and that allowed us to keep them focused on what we were doing, because that was really what they needed. They needed to be more focused on us than the other team.
So
But they were
can
good
you
at
give
this.
us, sorry, I was going to say, could you give us some examples of what you mean by when you say focusing on us, so to speak? I mean, I think everybody who's a coach who listens in or whatever has some sort of idea, but like, does that for you look like this is the way we play a stagger? Remember that. Or this is the way we play in a way. Like one of the things I really noticed in this game was that there's not a lot of ball screen action in your conference in this game at all. So, in terms of style of play, what are you reminding the guys of? What do you want to do?
Well, like you talked about stagger, or you got some pin downs or what have you. It's you know hip pocket chase, hard and fight to keep the ball out, and then with the hedge, not allowing it to curl. Just reminding of how we wanted to play it, and here's why. Like, we want this kid to catch it and be ready for him, because he might be quick catch. We don't care if he takes a singular dribble or maybe two, but we don't want him catch and shoot. They had a kid on the team that had been hurt previously, so he didn't start in this particular game, but he was important to them. But he got in foul trouble, so that helped us. But just specific to those, the two kids, 22 and 23, in this particular game were the ones that we were focused on. So we went, kind of reviewed our coverage of how they would screen or how they would do something, but here's how we're going to cover it. We're not adjusting anything. Here's how we want to transition. Here's how we want to do this. We didn't really focus as much on what they were doing, because if we started trying to adjust here and there and all over the place, they were not going to stick to what we want to be doing.
Like it. So, one of the things I'm curious about, you've been at a high school level longer than I was. One of the things that I found very difficult was the detective work, so to speak, in that, like you talk about in your scouting report, like you were able to watch a few of their games and you started earlier in the season, but there's not usually accurate stats or even stats at all of other teams. So how do you sort of figure out which players are the players that you should be focusing on and what tendencies or traits you want to take away from them when you don't have access to things like a synergy or I don't know, are you guys using Huddle at all? Because you mentioned you were just getting like streams, but like
Yeah,
you don't have advanced statistics. How are you doing that detective work?
so well, it's exactly that, detective work. Some people put their stuff max prep, so you might be able to grab something here or there. You talk to other coaches to get their stuff, what happened in a particular game. I'll have people send me pictures of their scorebook when they play a team. Uh,
Did I
looks
lose
like
you?
looks like I froze again, right?
Yeah, yeah, no. So you said you'll have people send you pictures of their particular sports book, and then anything after that.
Yeah, then we might throw a game into huddle and have it statted out for us just so we have something. This particular team we played, and we had a history. Their best players were seniors, so we had a history of who they were, and they hadn't really
Right.
changed what they like to do over the years. So it was very similar.
Was their coach a longtime coach in your division too? And if yes, do you find that he changed very many things from year to year, or did you have an essence of what he wants to accomplish?
So he was an assistant for the 4 years previous for the coach they had, who then went over to help the girls' side. So he did a lot of the same stuff that they did previous to that. So there wasn't a bunch of change, a lot of similar stuff.
Nice, like it. Um, all right, so you've played them before. You've got an idea of who you want to focus on. You've got an idea of what it is you want to do. Uh, you get to the game, you start playing the game, you're in the game. How do you feel you guys are executing what you told your guys? And when are you beginning to make adjustments, if you are at all?
Okay, so in this particular game, I think we caught them a little off guard because we had changed our offense a little bit. I don't know if you noticed. I think second half a little more prime. We did a little bit more of it in the second half, but we was basically crossing the ball from lane line to lane line area with some exchanges of the wings, and the guy in the post was just kind of moving, taking some space. But basically, we were trying to move guys around, and then we would attack a particular matchup. So we did that in the second half. That was new. I don't. They weren't. They hadn't seen that most likely, so they weren't ready for that adjustment. But really, it was about trying to spread the floor and attack them if we could. That was our biggest focus for this particular group. And then we had some kids that can shoot it, but there were nights when they wouldn't. And thankfully, this was a night that they hit a few of those shots from the perimeter as well.
What's your game plan of attack normally? Like, are you trying, and I mean this from the shot selection perspective, are you trying to get things in the sequence of what is sort of the traditionally accepted spectrum now, or are you trying to just get the ball to your best player and have them create something? Like, what's your overall philosophy on how you want to attack?
Well, I think in high school it's a little different. Like like you mentioned that we don't recruit, so we don't go get players, so we have what we have, and so we have to kind of have a mix. Uh, what do I want to do the most? I want to attack the basket. I think at the high school level, if I can get the ball in the paint, that's just advantageous for us. We can get in the foul. We can get another team into foul trouble, which at the high school level I think is good to do because most of those teams have certain players they need in the game, and if we can get them into foul trouble, that gives us an advantage. So we want to attack the lane. We want to collapse the defense if we can, and then from there, probably the next thing is our guys are hitting, kick outs, kick it out, try and get a three if we can, or attack the closeout because closeouts aren't as good as well.
Right.
So trying to attack those types of things. If we can spread the floor, our spacing of this particular year wasn't the best. I think we do a better job of it now based on some new information that I've picked up specifically over the COVID. I see Jimmy's on here. He and I had a good conversation. I've picked up some stuff from him that I think has helped me. Matter of fact, I used his name in practice the other day. This
There
is
you
what
go.
I'm supposed to. So, it's
I think Jimmy has that effect on all of us.
yeah.
We're all changing the way we think about certain things for
Yeah.
sure.
So, but the goal was to space the floor and try to attack them, but with movement. And we want to have the weak side. The weak side we want moving as well. I think that is something that we see right now is that we'll find teams try to attack, but nothing's happening. So everybody's staring and watching the ball, and then they can help. So we are always trying to find a way to reverse it. But while we reverse it and that kid's got in a position, maybe he might be able to attack, that two or three guys are doing something on the other side so that the defense initially has to be moving. But when our movement takes place, it puts them into positions that the ball might be able to get dumped off to them for a shot as well. So kind of trying a combination, and it's got two factors, the movement to occupy the D, but also find us better space.
I have a question that I kind of know the answer to from the think tank with you recently, but I'd be curious to hear it on this show. It's going off script a little bit, but what's your philosophy on adding new sets within a game, like a sideline out of bounds or a baseline out of bounds, that kind of thing? Just because we were talking about it recently, and I actually really liked your answer about it. I'm wondering like how you would, if you do employ certain something like that.
I don't have a problem doing that. I think obviously not as complex when you're doing that in game if they've never seen it before. I have no problem drawing something out they haven't seen. We did it last night actually. Again, last two games we've done it where we needed something different based on what we were seeing on the floor, and we pulled them over. We drew something out, and they executed it. But what I would definitely say is that we practice that. Like we have time in practice, not a ton of time. We don't do it all the time, but we do have time where we will take a segment and split the teams and we'll play and then call timeout and diagram something they've never done. And the expectation is they have to at least complete the movements. They might not get the shot we want, or they might not get a basket, but they have to complete those movements. So they have to be trained how to read the board and the information and go out and do it at least this next play. If you want them to do it really well, obviously, then you need to be practicing it. But if I need to catch somebody off guard, I don't have a problem trying to draw something up for this one possession because they haven't seen that before.
Right. Like it. Things like depth charts and substitution patterns. You mentioned you're fairly guard heavy. What are your philosophies on how many you play? And, like, are you being equal with minutes? Are you playing your better players significantly more, as most coaches do? Do you know who you're specifically subbing for whom, all that kind of stuff?
I would say that we kind of treat it like a depth chart in that this guy would go for this guy. So we have an idea. I have a couple kids that can play multiples, but for the most part, if you're a two, you're a two. If you're a three, you're a three. Twos and threes are similar for us. So you could be either or, and that gives us a little interaction there. Fours are more of a perimeter for us than others. Um, Generally my fives are guys that are not perimeter shooters, but my center this year is 5'11", 6 foot. He can't shoot a jump shot, but he's tough as nails. He's a linebacker on the football team, so he can get rebounds. And we've changed our offensive rebounding philosophy. So it's been advantageous for us as a small team to be able to get some of that. So
How many are you sending into the boards? What's your philosophy there?
right now, that this particular game that we're playing, it was three guys to boards to shoot, and then the shooter is supposed to just shoot, and then we had one guy 3-point to half court. That's how we attack that. Right now, we do what's called route rebounding. So basically, all five go. The reverse of it is we're learning how to tag. So the routes. So depending on where you're at on the floor determines kind of how you start towards the rebound, but then it's mixed with a little bit of tagging. So everybody has a responsibility to try and rebound offensively. Now,
I'm
we
sorry,
have
that's
given up.
referring to tag up philosophy from Aaron Fern, basically, is what you're talking about when you're talking about tagging there, right?
Yeah. So you pick your guy up, but we've given up a couple breakaway layups, but at the end of the day, like Tuesday, we played a team that was much bigger than we were. And we had 16 offensive rebounds compared to their 6.
Wow.
And we had 28 defensive rebounds compared to their 25. So, and we only gave up one breakaway layup because we missed our tag. So, it's a give and take. I'll take 10 points if I only have to give up 2.
For sure. So, along those same lines, during games like this, what are you tracking in game, if anything? And what stats are important to you when you get, box scores, end of first quarter, at the halftime, all that kind of stuff?
That's kind of funny that you think I'm getting a box score at any. I get the box score after Huddle breaks it down 12 hours after I put it into the system.
Nice.
We
So,
track.
Coach, I've been there. Believe me, I understand what that's like. So.
we basically on the bench, I take a look at shot selection, so types of shots. We have our shot chart going, and then we have a possession chart where we track every possession, what the result of the possession is, and that's really probably the two biggest things. If we go too long without points, we look at we're looking at timeouts, obviously based on our chart. If we we're looking at what we call them. They're called kills. They're called all kinds of different things, but the segments of stoppages in a row. We're looking at those types of things. Um, Probably
I've
the
heard that
biggest
called
thing
a
for us.
turkey before too, actually.
I've heard that. Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. So probably the biggest thing is shot selection, shots that we're taking. Um, are we getting the ball in the paint? There's a lot of note
So
taking going on.
if you're deficient in any of those areas that you are tracking, how do you implement change? Is it just a quick, hey, we need to go back to the post? Or are you calling specific sets? Are you looking for specific players? What's your method of
We're calling probably a set that gets us the movement that we want, and we're also focusing in on a particular kid probably for the most part. Obviously if it's extreme, you're going to call timeout and talk about it a little bit, but at the end of the day, probably the biggest way to adjust that for us at our level is I've got a package of plays that addresses different types of movements that we want. And so I will call something that will put us into that situation that we're looking for.
Are you keeping anything like a cheat sheet of your plays on the bench?
Of my
Like,
plays,
yeah, like do you have anything where it's like if I need a shot for my two, go to this action, or like do you have any sort of cue card, or are you just
I don't know if it's broken down like that, but I do have a shot. I have a game or a set card that gives me all my stuff. One year I did have it broken down by player, but I don't currently have it that way. It's more situational, and I kind of know them all because I've used a lot of them quite a bit. So um, I don't necessarily have to have it broken down like that on the sheet anymore.
right? Like it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to move into a bit of video from the game. Nobody? Awesome stuff. All right. Let's go here. Let me get my video panel. And Dennis, if you want to keep an eye on the chat, just because I'm in here, I
Sure.
don't always pay attention to it. But you're good. You can see this.
Yep.
And let's see if it plays smooth. This is your first play of the game. So I'll play it once. Everybody can take a look at it. I'll try to describe it the second time, and then the third time it's all yours. Give me an idea of what you were hoping to accomplish and what you thought in terms of what you got, and obviously don't be married to the results. So ball starts on the right slot. There's a swing, and I'd almost call it a shuffle cut, but it basically ends up being a chin screen. And then we've got a pin down on the help side, comes for a shot, misses the shot.
Yeah. So basically, this was one of the ways in which we try to kind of spread the floor. The guy in the post is a shooter. He's not really a post player. We didn't really have a post player for this group. He's just the biggest kid we had, but he was good at popping out and hitting shots. So this particular offense, basically, you see it now that he takes a shot. If he doesn't, he's going to kick it out to 30 over here on the wing, and it kind of reverses and does a lot of the same stuff. And basically, what it does is it spreads the floor, and on the reversal, it provides an isolation opportunity, and then it has obviously the pin down that allows for the guy popping to the top if you have a shooter. Now, this particular kid that shot it, he's a sophomore. He's now a senior for us. He plays a point now, but he shot it decent that year. The trying to think. Actually, the kid that's deep in the court, the kid that just passed, is on the wing right now. Had we reversed it a couple times and we get him on the wing, the expectation is he's going to the rim. So we're just looking for matchups. It's trying to move the defense as much as we can, try to be spread, but just keep them moving, and then try and find the particular matchups we want. So Dan getting a shot, if he's open, was a good thing for us. 10, or he's number 4. He's 10 now, but the kid has got the ball. If we found him on a wing and it was in isolation, we would expect him to try and drive.
I think I have one clip of that later on in the game.
Yeah.
Question for you. I don't see it in the clip. I watched the game or whatever, but like you guys do not play with a shot clock, correct?
We do not.
Yeah.
Which allows for some of these types of things. Like this offense here, like we would run this if we need to slow the game down because of time and score and that type of stuff. We could actually still run the same offense because it just keeps going and going. But
Right.
the problem is you got to get the kids patient enough to, hey, I'm open, I can shoot. I actually wish we had a shot clock, but we don't.
Well, I mean, your game's not ending up 6-4 like that game in Alabama or Mississippi, whatever it was recently.
Well, the
So
biggest argument about shot clock is you're going to have all these bad shots. I go, we haven't seen a high school game. We got all those bad shots anyway.
yeah. So we're gonna move to the defending side of the ball for a few clips. This is one of the few ball screens that I could find in the entire game. Uh, I'll play it like I said. Talk me through it afterwards. But I mean, basically, all it is it's a walk up and turns into what would be a drag screen towards the center of the floor. At the same time, on the help side, there's I guess I would call that a shuffle cut as well. And then you guys end up helping ball side on the penetration, and they get a corner three. So give me an idea of how you wanted to play it. The coverage on this to me looks like you were about to switch or go over and show for a bit, one of the two.
Probably going to go over and show for a bit because 23 here was their best player and their best shooter. The guy setting the screen, he could shoot, but we would prefer him. The only reason we helped out of the corner on this kid is because we didn't want that kid. We don't care if he shot. So 10, was it 10 that's here in the corner? We
Yep.
rather have him shoot than 23. And that's kind of unfortunately how it works. You pick your poison. 10 was not going to beat us. 23 would. It wasn't great. I wouldn't say it was great coverage in any way, shape, or form, but it's kind of the concept there that's going on.
So for your overall concepts that you would use for your team that you're teaching throughout the year, you have your coverage type. Do you want to typically play it with only two, or are you a coach who involves a tag? And when you do help off of the ball side, like you do in this instance, that would be scout specific. I'm assuming you're saying you
Yeah,
would
we
give them that
wouldn't.
information in the week leading up, like, hey, if this guy's over here, we don't care, cut loose on him.
Yeah, so in this particular game, 22 is not in the game now. 22 and 23 were the two guys that we were focused on. So we told certain guys. So 11 was guarding 10 for a specific reason. That was so that he could help and do this type of thing. He was good at sticking his hands into the cookie jar and not getting caught.
Right.
And so he was good at that kind of thing. So we put him on a kid that we weren't really concerned about. You know, this kid probably hit a couple shots, but we were going to win if he's the one taking shots.
Right.
We do need to be in help better, but in this particular coverage, they weren't. Like if you look at him, the two guys on the backside, obviously he got face cut on his thing, so he wasn't paying attention, and then the other kid was standing up and he wasn't shifting over. So it just.
So this one is a long clip that involves. I put in horns and a stagger away. I think my notes were also what made you jump up on this play. I think you got a little animated if I remember correctly, but the clip goes for a bit because there's a lot of action involved and they lose the ball temporarily. Like you said, no shot clock. So on these kinds of plays, what are you saying to your guys? How are you keeping them involved, etc.? And give me 1 second. I'll run it through again just so anybody who's listening can get an idea of what it is. So let's back this guy up, and your initial action looks like a horn set that they pass to the right side, turns into a stagger away, and
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
I would say based on what I'm seeing, so this was a set that they would use that we had actually talked about. And 4, who is chasing the ball right now, totally was not paying attention. And so he was not where he was supposed to be. So the way we played that stagger really wasn't the way we would want it to take place. Thankfully, there was a tip. Some other guys were associated, so they didn't have a clean catch. And the other part too, like you see how he reverse pivoted to look towards the bench side. That's a backdoor thing that they're doing. So 23 stepping up. We we had instructed our guy that if they ever dribble away from you and then turn quickly back at you, you instantaneously jump into the line of the basket from the player, not worry about the ball, because he's only going back door. We wanted to make him catch it on the perimeter if he was going to catch it.
Interesting.
So
So instead of on the line, up the line, you want to be more between basket and man, is what you're saying.
Well, with this particular team, because they would use that turn right at you and then try and get you to jump to steal the ball and then go back door. So anytime they dribbled away from you and turned at you quickly, we told them to actually jump away from the ball and go directly in between the player and the basket.
And quality of the shot towards the end of the play. Obviously, the play breaks down a bit. They get it back to the top after working it around, and he just sort of pulls up in what is your center's face. Are you okay with this overall? Does this shot make you happy, etc.? And
I would have liked a better contest to it. He's a little off, but the fact that this kid's taking it as opposed to 23 was really, and it was in my mind not a great shot for them. It was a win defensively for us, whether he makes it or not, because if that kid makes that shot, he's feeling more confident. He's probably going to take some more.
For sure. We got another one on the defending side. We got an Iverson to a step up. There's a 45 cut on the pop. And I think my question was help from where on the drive, etc. So here's the Iverson. Here's the step up. They roll. They don't get anything, so they swing, and there's the 45 cut. But he drives back where the ball came from into a gap and gets by your guy, gets a shot up, misses the layup. Without being married to the result, talk me through it.
Well, other than we didn't help very well. So he went over it. The other guy, go ahead and start again. I want to.
Sorry, I'll just let it play then. Let me know if you need me to stop it anywhere.
So basically what I saw there is the ball screen on the side. So, they switched it, which the guards have that liberty. Now, I would say right now, the way we do it now as compared to when we played then is we switch everything now. This was a situation where they were both perimeters, so they have the ability to switch. He got stuck on it, so he did. 25 for us is closing out. He got beat. He was the one they just shot over. You notice his closeout's not very good. He was not a great on-ball perimeter defender. The problem is we also are kind of stuck in cement, I would say, and no one really helps him when he gets beat. We don't really want to help out of the corner, but on this particular group, it wouldn't have been an issue because the kid in the corner was not a shooter. So, and then on the backside, we weren't over enough. Now you understand a little bit now why they needed to win this game to be 11-11.
For sure. Take me through some of your points on switching when you tell your guys that you got perimeter at this point. You mentioned he gets caught on the screen, but he's still trying to go over. I almost feel like they were playing a drop and over here.
Well, he was probably trying to get over because of where it was at. And this kid is always fighting. So he probably was trying to get over there. He got stuck. So the other guy stepped up to him. So he lost his guy a little bit, and the guy underneath was kind of coming over, but right away they probably could have hit that kid going to the basket, and they didn't, because you notice 25, he didn't shift either until it was too late. So He was out of position, which caused his closeout to be so bad.
Do you do anything that is three-way switching type deal?
Say that again?
Do you do any three-way switching at all? Because I feel what happens here is that 25 comes over to help because 23 got caught on the screen. So at this point, he helps, but then he has to recover, and it creates the long closeout. Whereas if 23 is the person who stays up at this
I apologize if you hear the noise. I guess I got a class that's coming into this
Don't worry
open
about
space.
it. Don't worry about it at all. If 23
we have not.
It could shorten that a bit.
We have not really done any of that. We're more of really should be over the guy on the weak side should be shifted over a little bit more. He should have been hitting that roller as opposed to 25 chasing him down the lane for some reason.
Right.
The switch could have been better. Not lose contact and be with his guy. We do that. The group we have now does it a lot better than this group did, but we've not done the three-way stuff.
I'm wondering if this is one of the sets that you had for them. I called it wedge pop step, so I'll play it through so you can take a look. But basically, it's a dribble to the right corner. There's a wedge screen. He pops, and then there's a step up, and he ends up shooting it. I also notice, and I'll get to the clip in a few clips. You guys basically run the exact same play, and I was wondering if you implemented that same play as a thumb of the nose to them, or if it is something that you run.
Yes, this is one of their sets. Unfortunately, even though we've covered it, 25 was able to get screened. This was an instance where they were just going to switch on the top because we knew it was both perimeters. And you'll notice that 4 was pretty deep into the lane. And I'm unstable again, it looks like.
Well, we got you. Are you?
Got me? Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 is pretty much in the lane because the kid on the perimeter wasn't somebody we were worried about. Because again, 23 is the one with the ball. They're trying to find 23 with the ball. And you knew that if he came off that screen, he wasn't going to be passing. He was probably going to shoot it. That's just the mentality that kid had. So I would say, what happened?
I just stopped the share because there was a comment in the chat, but the comment was exactly what my next question was going to be, in that if 23 is pretty much their best player, how do you feel about him taking this mid-range jump shot? Does that?
How do I feel about the kid taking that?
Does that make you happy, or do you?
That was a win possession for us. I'll take that shot for him, based on what he did. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that we were able to beat them is that he would take shots that really weren't great, and so that win.
So this is on your offensive side, and then this kind of gets into, there's a few clips from this. You talked about the continuity of it with your continuous away screens. So you get it in a way that turns into like a double cut out of the corner, which is an interesting concept for me. So your first one curls, and then your second one pops up to the slot, and then same sort of action happens on the opposite side where you get the pin and then you get the double cut. And it's just continuous. So give me an idea of that.
This particular set is about just getting the defense to move and then eventually tack it off of one of those cuts. So basically what's happening is when the ball crosses the basket, the guy is going to screen the guy in the corner, and the guy in the wing actually is just supposed to run off his rear end through the lane into the other corner. If they're not paying attention, you can get that going to the basket. But then what eventually happens is that you've got them moving around and they stop paying attention. In this particular possession, the kid shoots a 3, but a lot of time we get something going to the basket on this with the spacing because they're so worried about their guy from having to, they're constantly moving and there's no post help that they end up losing their help position, and then we can get something going to the rim.
As a teacher,
that's the specific purpose of it. It's not necessarily looking for any particular shot other than moving the basketball. And we would use this too to try and find a matchup. We've done that with this particular set. Right. So in this instance, let's say this 3 who's under the basket. You say, hey, we want to attack 3. So you'll notice that eventually every guy is going to touch the basketball the longer it goes. So we would run something like this until the guy had the ball that we wanted and the floor was spread, and then he would change and attack. This group, not necessarily, like I said, you notice the kid, he stepped out, took the 3, probably wasn't our best option. I would like the ball to touch the paint first if possible before we jack up that 3, but he also is a kind of, I don't know, later in the game, I don't know if you noticed it, it's like 2 minutes ago, we have a good lead, and it's kind of crazy. he throws up a 3 from the corner and nails it. I got my hands on my head like, oh my gosh, was not exactly the shot we needed, but it worked.
Right. So, a couple questions. When you get to the matchup that you want, will the action continue, or will you just sort of fan out and let that player try to get something out of it?
No, the action continues, but we try to train the kids to understand how to respond to the drive. Like, we spend some time teaching them, hey, so one of the things we constantly say is good offense doesn't score points, baskets do. So that's why we focus on shooting so much. Like, you can have bad offense, but if you can hit a shot, then nobody cares. But if you run great offense and you can't score, then everybody's worried about you. So we take time to teach them how to blow up the offense and how to respond out of it. So then once they understand that concept, now we can keep it moving. But when that guy drives, it screws up all the movement. But what we've then done is taught them, he's driving. Well, if it doesn't work, he's kicking the ball out. Well, he kicks the ball out. How do you keep going? Because I hate that. When I say hate, I mean I hate. If one of my kids takes the ball and dribbles it out to the top and says, all right, let's set this back up, drive, that is probably going to get you pulled off the floor. We need to be able to continue to play without having to reset everything, which we see a lot because since we don't have a shot clock in Michigan, you'd be surprised how many schools, they come down, they run their transition, and then they pull it out and try and set something up because you have the time to do it.
Right.
So
it takes away from the flow. Actually, used to want to be one of my teaching points used to be like, if you, similar to what you're saying, if you have to pull out and reset, you've done something wrong. There's another action that you can get to sequentially.
Well, in my mind, unless the game is unless the point guard needs to take control of the game because something's going crazy and we just need to get control.
Right.
If you have to reset it, then I haven't taught my kids enough how to play basketball, because you should be able to just play basketball. Like, if I bring a bunch of 40-year-old men into the gym that have played basketball, they aren't going to have to reset it. Matter of fact, they'll probably tell the kids what they're about to do, and they'll still be able to get it done just because they fundamentally do the stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So, teaching point on this screen where the guy is running off of him, do you want him to make contact or not?
Do I want which guy to make contact? I'm sorry.
So, your gentleman right here, I think it's 13, is going to set a screen for the guy on the corner, but the guy on the wing is going to come right off of his back like a brush screen or a rub screen. Do you want the guy who is setting the pin down to get any piece of that defender? Or is it really
he's going
to screen the second of checking to see that he's there?
Yeah, he's just going to screen the guy in the corner, and the other guy's running off him. We're not worried about any contact on this particular offense with the guy on the wing.
The other thing too is if you want to run the action to get to a particular matchup, are you calling something that tells the guys that, or is everybody just sort of expected to know, like, hey, we want to attack 23 a lot, that's the guy we want to go at?
In this particular, it would be who we were trying to attack. Team, I don't know, is it someone pinned out that we were trying to attack? More so, we were trying to make them move and constantly be moving. Did I shut down? Looks like I'm.
No, you didn't shut down, but you lagged a little bit there. I think we got the answer out of it. So this one is just handoff into swing and pin down. So it ends up being similar type action, but it just starts with a different beginning. You end up getting a layup there. Take me through it a little bit. Teaching points, anything fun there?
So with the offense, obviously we call them startups, but just different ways to kind of get started with something. And then it has a similar movement, but because of the change, I think it just allowed us to get a matchup that we wanted on the wing, because we had a dribble. Let's see here. He hands it off, and then
here he is coming off the handoff, and then there's a reverse or a swing pass.
Then he swings it, and then he turns around and gets him. This is actually a little bit of a change in offense in that we call it Indiana. So basically the four perimeter guys, the court's been cut in two and they're working as partners. You see it a little bit more in the second half of this game.
I understand.
Now they're working in partners, but in this particular instance, this group, all they really did was screen down or screen away. They never really did anything else with like flares or anything like that. So I think that's why you have the handoff here, because this guy's with his partner. So he uses a handoff instead of just passing.
Are these play calls, or are they like flow type things where you're specifically saying, hey, let's get a different entry into the set, or is it just flowing into the different entry?
It depends on the year. This particular kid, 13, had a pretty high IQ. You know, he plays college soccer, but he's a tiny dude. If he was, 6'1", 6'2", he'd have been playing basketball somewhere just because of his IQ. What he does. So he was smart enough to know, hey, I need to change up a little bit from time to time. In a startup situation like this, in this particular offense, it would have been flow based. It would not have been called. We do have some startups that we do call, but this would not have been one of those. He was just reading the defense and decided to do something different.
So Dennis, I'm about halfway through my video. We're at the hour. Have you got a little bit of time? I know you're in school, or should I skip ahead? Should I skip ahead?
Can you hear all the music in the background?
Yeah, it's a nice touch, actually. It's a special run it back.
It's because the orchestra decided to practice in the hallway.
Nice, love it.
So
this one is the same set as before.
Okay.
And like I was saying, I was wondering if maybe you decided to run it a little tit for tat, but it's the same idea with the wedge pop, and then it was going to be a step up ball screen, but your guy ends up shooting the ball. So, is there any, hey coach, I see you tipping your hat towards the other guy going, or is it a set that you regularly run and just
we did something similar. Really, when we do it, so we run a similar set. They were always looking for 23 when they ran their version. Our version was that kid. Really, what we should have done is probably gone to the other side of the floor,
right?
So that he's coming off with his right hand. But really, at the end of the day, 25 who's setting that screen, he's stepping to set a screen, but he shoots it anyway. If 4 comes off that screen and gets one, I think it's 1 that's guarding him to help. Yeah. Our guy actually isn't going to roll. He's going to pop, and he's probably going to drain that 3 himself because he is one of our better 3-point shooters.
Nice.
That's what we were looking for, is kind of a pick and pop scenario. Trying to basically 4 comes off that screen and he's trying to figure out which of those 2 defenders he can get to guard him, because he's kind of a crafty little guy. And he would get into little seams and crevices. And basically his job was to try and pull one of those guys to guard him and give it to the other guy. And if they don't, then he was going to get to the rim, kind of a thing. But that's kind of the way how we were running it. But we ran it. We did run it before. They've run theirs for years, but ours, it was nothing personal towards that coach, I guess. That's what you're asking.
I actually do that sometimes in games. That's why I was asking, because like there'll be times where it's like first play of the game or something, I'll run their set just because I want to thumb my nose a little bit. But I'm a bit of
there is something to be said about using their own stuff against them and it working. So
this is just an easy one. I ask it all the time. Transition threes, yay or nay for you?
Crappiest shot. That was not a good shot. He was not one of our best. He can hit threes, but he's percentage-wise, he's not what we call a green light. We do drills that rate you red, yellow, green, and he was not a green, and so that would have been a green light shot only. So it was not an acceptable shot for us.
Interesting. Love it. I love the fact that you have a red, yellow, green chart and all that, and you allow the players an ability to earn their way into certain shots. I think that's a great.
So like right now we have like 4 different drills that we run, and then you get a value on each of those drills, and we track it, and so every kid knows what their color is. And the best part about it is, I guarantee you at some point I asked that kid, what's your color? And he knew exactly why I was asking.
For sure. Sideline out of bounds. It's a back cut pin down action. There ends up being a split on the side that was the original ball side. So talk to me about this split action on the other side of the floor. And what I mean by that is right here, there's a back screen happening and he slices through, and then there is a pin down happening and he comes for the shot up top. Ends up shooting it at the nail. And I'm sure Jimmy's eye is twitching with the mid range, but talk to me about the idea of the split and what you get out of it sometimes, how you teach it too.
Basically, this is a set that we run. I know James, we had this conversation, do you practice the blobs and slobs, you just get it in? We try to run something, we call this ball side. So basically, the guy in the bottom, when it started on the opposite post, cut to the corner, he's the guy that ends up getting that shot in this play, but he cuts to the corner. If they throw it to him in the corner, we have a two-man game that we just play. Because they went up top, we swing it. The post is supposed to back screen that guy. Oh, class is changing. The post is supposed to back screen that guy so that he can cut through and then turn it into a double for the guy in the corner.
Right.
The fact it went into a decent jump show because of high school, and we want to take advantage of it. And we were fine with that. Kid, are we fine for? But it's not my preference. I prefer 13 could have popped out wider, and we could have had one more option over there.
Like it.
They ran it
freezing a bit, sir. I don't know if you want
great.
Me to
the guy in the post.
Hang on. Yeah, we're good. I'm starting it back up. We were on this sideline out of bounds. I'll reshare. I lost you right at the point where you were talking a little bit about the guy setting the back screen. So we hang on.
Okay.
Back that up.
So he's supposed to screen the guy coming out of bounds, cutting through. See if we get anything, but basically then he turns and screens the guy in the corner. For the two of them screening with him coming up.
You had started into, so it was right here where I had lost you. You'd started into a little bit about at the high school level and the certain particular shot being okay or not being okay with it. So he ends up, faking and getting this jump shot at the nail.
Okay.
So could you elaborate on what you were saying there just before we lost you?
So he's a decent mid-range jump shooter. I think there's some regards to where they shoot on the floor. Obviously, want to get them into the paint because he can hit at a decent clip. We're fine with that for him because if he doesn't take that, as long as he's guarded, we don't want it to be a tough shot. But mid-range, he's near the one step, that'd be an issue. Favorite.
All right, so we're trying it again. We've got another background here. I'll skip ahead to the next play. Basically, I think in summary of what I caught from that last one, we're okay with certain players shooting certain shots. Basically, the better quality shots lie in the ability of the player. Would that be an accurate summary?
Yeah, if you because you lose. It's a good shot for him, but if he passes that, possibly some other kid's taking a shot that's really not a great shot. So
right. And let's not worry too much about the pausing before. I'll edit out some of that stuff. You can see my screen here.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So you got a pistol set here, and I'm curious what your teaching points are and how you manage to get guys to play with pace in pistol, because I found that when I coached high school, even when I coached college, after this handoff before the ball screen, there's a lot of slow down and there's a lot of it's not really decision making. It's the wrong phrase to say, but there's a lot of like processing of what's in front of you instead of just playing into it and getting the right guy. So, I mean, you get your handoff ball screen, you stop at the point, swing the ball, he attacks, and your guy that was on the help side block ends up coming to what would be the new help side block or the original strong side block, and then gets the drop off for the finish. It's a great pass. But how do you get your guys to play with pace? How do you teach this set? What are your teaching points?
We train the actions and then I yell at them. It's pretty much it.
Fair.
No, but we train the actions, and then in this instance, I don't. It's not necessarily pistol. It basically was a handoff, and we were trying to screen coming off the handoff, because if he possibly got something good, 25 could have turned and shot it. Basically, if he gets the screen and can go downhill, can we get 23 off his guy? Which he didn't do any of that. So the guy pops, and so it's just kind of like motion stuff. And basically, the guy in the block is supposed to be opposite the ball. Is really all that's taking place. He didn't blind himself. He should have gone down below and then come out on the other side as opposed to going in front of the guy that's guarding him. But it's just about trying to move. What I find is we just need to move the ball from side to side. If we can touch sidelines, our points per possession goes up. Like last year, we charted it. If we touched 3 sidelines, we were like 1.4. If we actually touched the paint at the same time, it was 1.6. Not that kids are necessarily going to do that every time. It'd be nice if you could get them to do that, but they're not. But just getting them to understand that the more sidelines we can touch, the more the defense is moving, and it'll be advantageous for us. And I think that's all really that you got. There's just actions that are getting the ball to move side to side, and eventually the defense kind of breaks down a little bit, and we get a little dump off.
So when you are teaching side to side, do you allow your players to break that side to side action at any point if they see something that is advantageous? And the reason that I ask this is I've had a few coaches on who teach, European ball screen continuity. And a lot of the time, they're not even looking on the first or second side to attack. They're playing for that third side. Do you give your guys the freedom to make that decision and then teach them how to play out of that?
It depends on the guy. Certain players have more freedom than others. Again, it's that same concept we talked about with the shot.
Right.
If 13's got the ball in his hand, I'm fine with him breaking off. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where we are teaching them how to recover from blowing up the offense. Like if this is the offensive movement and 13 attacks, which you're not expecting, or he breaks the movements we're trying to do, then how are you responding out of that? And to keep playing, as opposed to having to, we got to reset and start over. No, we don't want to reset and start over. We're going to keep playing. So I would say it's more player specific. Not everybody has that same freedom. Certain guys, it's like, what are you doing? Your job is to pass him the ball so he can do it. So
like it. This is a defending clip. This is a bit of a unique set that they were running, in my opinion. I was wondering how you sort of implement it into your team principles. So basically, they've got 2 that come together right on the rim line, like a double screen, but they're in a tangent. And then after that, they stagger away and they hand off to the corner. And they don't really get anything out of it. They, in fact, end up turning the ball over, if I remember correctly on this clip. They end up with the swing pass and the drive, and then they try to set another stagger on the help side. And then off of that stagger, they try to swing it, and your guy knifes the pass and you end up the other way. So tell me about this set. Is it one that you had? And if it's not, how does it sort of fit into the way that you play a team defense?
Is one that we had seen, and basically they were looking for the back door. So if you pull back a little bit, when he comes off of this double, notice our guy's already dropped into the line of the basket with 23. So he's in his line. They're actually looking for, he's coming off. They're looking for 22 to either get to the rim, but we had told our top defender that he needed to take the ball and take the switch. I'm not sure why Ford didn't switch like he was supposed to right away, but they were coming at 23 and he was coming up the line. And so then our guy steps into his line so he can't go back door. And then they went to a handoff from there. So the set was come off the screen, attack, try the back door first, and then they kind of get this double going the other way, which then 4 gets stuck again. He's supposed to take the guy coming through, and he doesn't. He's got his back to the ball, so he kind of blew it twice. But at least we didn't get that back door on us. And then 13 was able to stay with his guy, and 23 was able to get through.
Nice.
The key with them is if you can blow up the initial action and make them have to do multiple things from there, we found that to help us.
It's interesting when it like that almost becomes counterintuitive where the deeper you get into certain actions, some teams become worse. And if you can blow up that primary action, it then again factors into what you were saying about doing a good job versus not doing a good job of teaching your guys how to play. So the farther along they get, they start like, oh, well, we're no longer in the play. What are we supposed to do here type deal.
I think that's why you got to teach them. You have to teach them what happens when it blows up. That's why we spend time on it, because it's about the concepts. It's not about the play anymore. It's about concepts. How can you play with concepts? Can you read the defense? What happens when it gets blown up?
So we got an offensive set here. This one is, I called it swing chin pop flare. So basically there's a swing. It's like a chin screen, except he comes ball side on it. You pop your big and then you set the flare. And I like this combination of actions. You drove out of it. You got a fairly contested shot. But talk to me about the set, the way you teach it, and what you're looking for.
Okay, so actually the guy, so he passes and you notice he runs through. Really, the action here has nothing to do with 25 setting a screen for 23. He's literally just supposed to be standing there. Basically, what he's doing is we're running 13 over 25 so that his guy can't be positioned to take away that pass to him. That's the only reason it's really happening.
Right.
The primary action is for this flare to take place. This kid, the read is that his guy is low, so we're going to throw the flare. If his guy had been high to take the flare, he's automatic touch and go for a layup. 4, again, unfortunately, is not doing his job, because right about now he should be setting up a screen for the guy that's coming up to the top to just keep the defense moving. But it's just a little flare and dive action that we get a lot off of, and we get this quite a bit. It's a little more contested than I would have liked. 25 was coming around. If he had double foot stopped and reverse pivoted back, he probably ends up getting a shot at a 3 here. But he's taking a hard drive. You know, if he's trying to get a foul, because that's something we want. We want to try and see if we can get him in foul trouble, that kind of stuff.
Like it.
We run a little option off of that. You run that a couple times, and it's kind of one that we're known for. So now if we call that play, but I'm touching my head, 23, instead of passing to 25, just continues it over to the wing. And that little guy that ran in front of 25, just kind of set it up, actually gets a layup at the rim because they're just chasing.
Huh. Like it. I actually remember we were pitted in a head-to-head offense-defense one time, and you ran a very similar action to this.
There was probably this play.
Yeah, the pop into the flare here. And it was, how would you guard it? And everybody voted that I would not be able to defend it, sir. So I'm not holding a grudge at all. We've got a baseline out of bounds. And then this is just my blatant shameless plug for my other little Twitter there. I run a secondary Twitter that is baseline out of bounds stuff. I like this one. It'll go up on that at some point. So at Hoop Blobs, if you're listening, please jump in, take a look. But I mean, basically it's a 4 high set, and the person on the help side elbow curls off of 2, and then both slip. You get the guy who started in the original wing, and he's just got a layup. How often do you get that in a game? How successful are you on those slips?
We get slips a lot. We haven't used this one this year, but we use this one quite a bit this particular year. So we'll run it high and low. So we'll run it where they're all free throw line, but we'll also run it where they're all just above the block in off the baseline, the same formation. And then you can run a rescreen where the guy that set the first screen gets another screen, and then you get a slip off of that. But yeah, we get that slip quite a bit because everybody's worried about the shooter. And because it's the second guy, it's usually the second guy that's getting it, not the first.
Yeah, I like it. See that one on Hoop Blobs for sure. 4 players in the action. There's the pin and the back screen happening while 2 cutters happen. Give me an idea of this help side high split with 4 guys going together. And you obviously end up with a pretty good shot here. So, for anybody who's listening, I'll describe it. There's a swing pass and then another swing pass to the opposite wing. And all 4 players are in action. So you get a back screen and a pin down happening with 2 cutters at the same time. And then on this particular play, 3 of the 4 players went to the ball side of the floor. The guy who was setting the pin down ends up just popping away and gets a wide open 3 at the wing.
Yeah, so the cuts were delayed, so they ended up being at the same time. So 23 was supposed to go a little sooner, but it ended up working out for us because everybody chased. But he's supposed to go down. 25, it was in the wrong place, so 23 is like waiting for him, but he's supposed to go down and through, and then the pin down take place. It's the same movement. It's really the same movement that we had earlier, the offense they were running, but because it's a little bit of a delay here, we were able to get the skip because everybody chased. And, of course, the ball is in our smartest kid's hand, so he was able to find the guy that's open at this point.
So with this action, I would categorize this as a complex, simple action. When you're teaching this to your guys, how do you teach them who they're supposed to be screening? Like
who they're supposed to be screening?
Yeah. Was that you writing on, or somebody just throwing?
That was not me.
No, somebody having some fun with the annotation.
That was definitely me. I apologize. I didn't know I could do that. So
He's
that's
having
pretty
too
cool,
much
though.
fun at the pool. That's what's going on there.
No, I'm amazed by this. It's pretty cool, but I'm sorry.
No, it's awesome. It's actually awesome. The annotation feature is cool, and I
you got something to write
because I got hacked that 1 week. So
you got someone to write it in there. I'll screenshot it so I have it for later. But,
no, I was testing. I couldn't. I was first timer. So.
Doesn't Jimmy sound like he's in the sun? He doesn't even sound like his regular self. He sounds like he's in the sun and happy, man.
I don't know.
I'm not happy. We lost yesterday, man.
He's got that voice like he's been yelling.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. That's 1,000%.
So I'm sorry. What was your question again? Yeah. What was your question again?
It was, how do you teach which guys who they are supposed to be screening? Because I found when I was at the high school level, guys often really lose track of that.
We do this type of stuff. We'll do a lot of 5-on-5. So that there's we don't break it down per se, other than when you screw up, I'm going to stop. And I ask a lot of questions, really what I do when I'm teaching this kind of stuff. It's kind of a teaching structure that I picked up from the classroom, but I ask a lot of questions. You miss your screen. All right, who's guarding him? When should you have noticed? Who is guarding him? That kind of stuff, and then just kind of work through it. Did you lose me?
No, I didn't. I'm just monitoring the chat. Somebody DM'd me. All right, so let's get into our next one. So we're towards end of game stuff now, getting towards this.
Yep.
Gets a little bit interesting as we go here. Before I start, how much end of game stuff do you work on throughout the season? Do you have, do you foul up 3? Do you foul up 2? Do you talk to your guys about all these kinds of principles? Do you have specific sets that you're teaching? Are you playing games like, hey, there's 2 minutes left, we're up 8, go? Like, what are you doing for that kind of stuff?
Later in the year, we would do situationals. We'll put time on the clock, score, those types of things. There are certain sets that we like to run in late game situations. We try to explain to them what we're looking for out of them in late game, as opposed to if we ran it earlier in the game, depending on the score. So we do deal with that. Those are instances too where the teams are broken up, and a coach, some assistants or myself will have a team, and you call timeouts. You can you can diagram stuff up, but we do spend a little bit of time on that. But it's usually mid to late season when we really focus on it more. But there's particular sets we like to run in late game, but there's sets we'll run anytime, but we just more specific to that, I guess. Go to the bread and butter a little bit more.
Okay, so 2 minutes left. You guys are up 8. It's the first bit of full court pressure that they start to implement. And what are your thoughts? Are you calling anything specific? Are you happy or unhappy with this? I mean, basically, your guard breaks the press by himself and takes, in my opinion, what I would consider a fairly contested floater in the lane. I think you don't need it personally.
Truthfully honest, the host school on this particular play, because I remember it vividly, she wanted to know why I wasn't cursing this kid out, basically. That was an awful play. It was nowhere near what we wanted to do. First off, it started by them throwing the ball to him in the corner, and then he breaks the trap by going to the sideline side, and then at half court, he goes behind his back. And there's a guy standing right there with him. He almost runs over. Our point guard's behind, and he just goes at 2 guys and throws one up. It is clearly textbook what we do not want to do here. And I think that's basically a high school play, basically, in a nutshell.
Fair enough. So basically that cost you, I think you were up 7 or 8. I think you were up 8. Yeah, you were up 8. And then they came down and they hit the 3. I didn't put that in. So you're up 5. It's minute 40 now. And it's a similar type situation where you've got to break some full court pressure and get it over. What are you yelling instruction wise, and how are you, making sure that what happened on the last play doesn't happen again type deal?
I honestly don't remember how I responded. Basically, we were trying to get it to 23 so he could get it back to 13, but we got it to somewhat the middle floor, and then they got it 13. I would have liked 13 to go get the ball a little earlier, and now we're kind of doing that we call Indiana, where they're just partnered up.
So this one, you actually end up sort of stalling for a bit of time, and it ends up being a jump towards the end.
Because he didn't grab the basketball and step through the double and make the pass, basically. And no one really stepped to the middle of the floor when they should have either.
So
a little bit too much.
Get the ball into the front court with no shot clock.
Mm-hmm.
What is your viewpoint on going something like a 4 corners and just stalling it out with the lead at this point, forcing them to foul?
Well, that offense that we were running, technically, if you don't take a shot and you just keep moving, it's going to work the same way. But it's best if you decide to limit your dribbles a little bit. We all understand that. The more I dribble around, the more chaotic it's going to be at this level. It would have been better for them just to make the pass, make a good solid screen, keep moving, and keep their space. Now they do this thing where they start running guys at the ball. And at that point, he needed to pick the ball up, step through the trap, and make the pass. Right. I think, and you froze right here with me rubbing my head like, what in the world are we doing? So
you guys actually end up taking the time out there after you, so that jump happens, you're awarded it with the arrow, and you draw something up. Are you telling your guys to go for the shot here as opposed to stalling out for time again?
Welcome to high school, my man.
All right. So, I mean, you get
this is that 3 I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Did you see my arm? You see me on the side? Look at watch me come right off what in the heck are you doing?
That's not like it's good. That's more what are we doing?
That's like you dummy, what are you doing? we are up 5 and we're going to take a long 3.
So in that timeout, talk to me what you remember about that timeout. Like, are you telling them, talking
Well,
to them?
based on who's getting the basketball right now, my assumption is that in the timeout we talked about getting it in and partnering up and moving the basketball side to side, because he reverses it through the big, swing it, but I don't know why we're throwing it down in the corner other than nobody was guarding him is probably why he threw it to him, but that's a time and score situation. First quarter, yeah, we're throwing to the guys jacking that up, but I think we're like just over a minute, maybe up 5. I don't need to shoot a 3 right there.
Right.
Now, thank heavens he made it, but if he doesn't make it, now what's the likelihood they're going to go down and score? And now it's a 3-2 or 3-point game. I'd rather just kind of work our offense and find a layup if we could. We do what's called freeze and deep freeze.
Right.
If you're in freeze mode, it's inside the paint. If you're in deep freeze, it's straight up layup or nothing. And we were probably in deep freeze at this point, and he shot a 3 anyway.
And he ends up hitting it. So my next question is, inside of that timeout, had you talked about the defensive end of the ball? So, you're coming back, you're up 8 basically with about a minute left. And, have you talked to them about, hey, we're not trying to foul. Hey, we're really plugging the paint, or, hey, we're giving up a layup and contesting every 3 type deal. Like what had you said about the defensive side, if anything?
Well, this particular game, I probably would have said it's 22 and 23. Get the ball out of their hand and then deny them the shot. And, one steps up and hits a shot here. He is probably option 3 or 4 for them. He's not contested very hard, but, the 2 guys that we didn't want shooting the basketball didn't even get an attempt off. Same kind of thing that we saw earlier where the guy stepped out, didn't really step out hard enough on him. You're up 8 with 57 seconds. At least try and make him put the ball on the floor once or twice before he passes it at
Right.
best, at worst. But this is kind of the worst case scenario. He closed out, but he didn't close out to the point where we want him to be. That's a sophomore making a sophomore play.
So you guys trade some free throws, I believe, and I just threw this one in because it's towards the very last seconds of the game. There's 15 left. You're up 7 at this point. So you had gone down to 5, and then it worked back up to 7. So there's a couple free throws that happen in there for sure. And they come down and they miss a quick 3. They get the board, and they swing it around, and they actually end up hitting another lightly contested 3 from deep. What are you thinking, if anything, at this point? I know 6 seconds is fairly long in FIBA with timeouts. It's an eternity in the NBA with timeouts. Are you worried, or are you at this point just kind of like, hey, just get it in, don't do anything stupid, we've been through this? Like, what's your mentality at this point?
We're up 4, right? I think because he just made that shot.
Yeah, 4. Sorry, did I say 5? I feel like I said
No, it's
5
on the. Yeah, if it was a 2, so yeah, we were up 4, I think. At this point, yeah, it's kind of chaotic. We run a little press break coming out. The idea is get it to the guy that can shoot free throws. How much time can you waste? We just got to make sure we get a good catch. We don't fumble it, and that's that we set that movement up so that it kind of there's a lot of brushing that could possibly happen in that situation that just kind of screws the defense up enough for us to get a solid catch.
Right.
And we know they're going to foul, so we just need a good catch. Don't do anything dumb, and get it to the right guy so we can go down and hit some free throws.
Awesome. Well, I mean, it's all I got. You end up escaping with it. You guys are up 4. I think you make both free throws. They call a timeout in between the free throws to try and mix you up a little bit. But, I mean, you end up getting out with the W. So congrats on that. And like you said, you went to the finals and lost there, was it? You said in the beginning? Sorry.
Well, that was a district final that we won. Like I said, you're talking about we escaped. To some extent we did. That group needed that win just to be 500. So then they went into the regional round, won the first one, interestingly enough, won the first regional game by 30, and then played a team in the regional final that had beaten us by 25. And I think we ended up losing by like 5 or 6 when it was all said and done. But it was a 1-possession game with about a minute to go. So, like you said, they had made some strides over the course of the year. But as you know, from when you were dealing with high school, sometimes you have to manipulate what you actually have. And sometimes you can manipulate it enough. Sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'll end with these kinds of closing thoughts. One, I appreciate you, sir. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but like, I know how difficult it can be making the most of what you have instead of just recruiting for better type deal. And I can see from watching your game that like you guys are well taught, even, you know, everybody's going to have brain farts type deal or whatever, but like your guys are well taught and they listen and respond quickly and you're running good action. And I like the fact that you don't run a tremendous amount of ball screen stuff and that you're doing a lot of off-ball movement and learning the game, etc. So I tip my hat to you, sir. Thank you for spending some time with us this week. Really appreciate it. You know, as far as the Run It Back stuff goes, thank you to the Rising Coaches Network. Obviously, I met you through there, and I've met a bunch of other really great coaches that have been willing to listen, learn, share the game, all that kind of stuff, and I really appreciate that. You know, next week on Run It Back, we have I'm filming a couple. I think Roberto Foix will be the person who's released directly after you. So there's that coming up. And then just, you know, lastly, like, honestly, any way that I can ever help, please reach out. I say that on camera because, like, Dennis, I think you're an incredible guy. I mean, obviously, you know, you've reached out to me willing to help in my situation. And I think that's awesome. Not too many people have ever, you know, like it's tough up here being locked down. And the fact that you're just willing to share the game, talk about the game, all that kind of fun stuff has been really, really cool. So a personal aside to you away from the show. Thank you. For anybody who's listening to this one, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
I was going to say, no, it's been great. You know, there's a bunch of guys on here that I've had great interactions with. I would consider friends at this point, all because of, you know, this whole situation that we're in and the fact that guys are just willing to chat and talk about a bunch of stuff, you know, and just, you know, develop a relationship that, you know, so now I have friendships with guys across the country and across the, you know, not even in country, you know, Europe and Canada. And,
I mean, like we got Germany, Ireland, you know, Savag played in Lebanon. We got like all around the world here, right? Definitely a couple of us from Canada as well. So, I mean, it's awesome that we've had this opportunity to network and get better and all that. I really appreciate that.
And I appreciate you letting me come on and talk about a crazy little high school game. So,
well, I mean, there's good coaches at all levels, and I say that all the time. I'll talk to anybody who is willing to share and wants to get better and is willing to talk to me because it's funny because Adams came out last week and Adam said to me, he's like, hey, man, your show's getting a little bit of a following. And I'm like, it's not for me. It's because of great coaches like you. I'm along for the ride. I'm here to learn. That's all it is. So anybody who's watching this one.
You're making it possible.
Appreciate you. Anyone who's watching or listening to this one, there will be some edits. Obviously, Dennis's internet cut out a little bit, so bear with it, please. Dennis, if it's okay with you, I'll throw in like your Twitter handle so that they can reach out to you if there's anything they want to share or learn from you about. I think that's all. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, sharing, listening, all of that. Appreciate it. See you guys next week.
Thanks.
And